Okay. Tonight, for the academic and professional experience sharing feature of our February 2012 business meeting, I have the distinct honor of introducing Mardi Veiluva, SJSU ASIS Student Chapter member, who is tonight's speaker. Mardi will share her experience of volunteering at the Library 2.011 conference. The topic of Mardi's talk is Library 2.011, Presenters Discuss Games and Learning. Tonight's presentation will last approximately 10 to 15 minutes. After the presentation, Mardi will answer questions in a Q&A session. I will now turn the mic over to Mardi to tell us about her interesting experience.
Thanks, Sarah. I just want to make sure if everybody can hear me okay. If you can, go ahead and give me a smiley face. Oh, great. Good. So I'm Mardi Veiluva, and I'm in my last semester at SLIS. And I just wanted to thank Sarah for inviting me, and I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes and then take questions. I'm wondering if maybe Sarah can either set a timer, or maybe somebody can just watch for 10 minutes and then maybe raise their hand, and that way I'll know. I won't have to keep an eye on the timer. So I'm going to go to my first slide here. I attended the Library 2.011 conference as what was called a super volunteer, so I had a long shift. And I wonder if people are familiar with the Library 2.011 conference that SLIS put on November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of last year. Maybe you can just give me a smiley face if you heard of that conference or maybe attended some of the sessions. And basically what it was a bunch of collaborate sessions just like this. There would be 6 sessions going on at one time. And people from all over the world came. I mean, we had people from India and Australia. And it was interesting because it went all the way, started something like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon one day, and just went like 76 hours or something like. It was 2 overnights and 3 days. And what was great about it was, as a volunteer, you would just drop into a room like this, and you would moderate. So you would load slides for people, and you would ask them if they had any questions, how to use the mic, and that sort of thing. And I knew how to do all of that because I had taken LIDR 298, which is a special projects, and I was an Illuminate trainer. And especially to the people that are new in the program, check that out. It's a really good way to get tech skills. I learned a lot from that program. And I'm wondering if anybody attended any sessions at Library 2.011, and if you remember anything. You can just type into the chat window as I'm talking, and then people can see what some of the content was. There was things like using iPads in a K-6 setting. There was all kinds of interesting stuff. And what did I get from the experience? I got stories, dreams, and inspiration. It was a fascinating glimpse at what library and information professionals are doing all over the world. This slide is from Pottermore, which is a game that's being developed by Sony in collaboration with J.K. Rowling, and it's based on the Harry Potter books and movies. And I thought these slides were just so compelling. This is in beta format right now. And Judith Way, who was the librarian that spoke about this, she was talking at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was just captivated by the pictures, by the story, and it really made me want to go ahead and play the game, to get in and try and play the game. I don't think it's been released yet. But here I am on my next slide at 1 o'clock in the morning with my 3 helpers, my dogs, and there I am monitoring 3 sessions at one time. So when I would go into a collaborate session like this, and I would check with somebody, and then I would click into another window, check with somebody else. So it was quite a lot to kind of manage, but it worked out. People were kind of patient. And that was fun. It was a fun experience. This is another slide from the Pottermore, and you can recognize Privet Drive from the opening of the first Harry Potter book. And what was really interesting is I prepared this presentation, this same kind of presentation, for a talk with the academic librarians at King Library. And when I was getting it ready, one of our professors, who you may know, Debbie Ferris, she raised the question. She raised the question of, do you think this is appropriate in an academic library, this kind of a game? Or is this kind of like, do you think that it was just a promotion, like a shameless promotion of the movies and the books and the game? And I thought, well, that's really interesting. I think the game is going to be free. I'm sure there'll be content attached to pay for it. But I started thinking about that, and then I thought, well, I'd wonder if it is appropriate. Is it appropriate to have this kind of a game in an academic library? Do people learn from gaming? And so I went and listened to one of the recordings, and one of the presenters at the Library 2.001 conference was Mary Broussard. And she was really interesting because she has a whole blog, and she has about 20 games that you can use in your library. And this particular game here is one that you can actually download for free. And there's a dice that you roll and you go around the board, and then you can put in questions about information literacy, questions about how to do citation, or questions about library layout, and see if your students are actually information literate and how much they do know about your library. This is her blog here, and I'm wondering if somebody wants to type it into the chat window for me, just off the screen, because that way it will be a live link. It's not a live link on the screen here, so if somebody wants to do that, they can copy it in. And she has links on this blog to over 20 games that you can download right now, and you can kind of adapt it to your own library. I'm going to move on. Oh, thank you. Thank you for typing that in. That's great. And there's another one somebody can type in if they like. This is a really interesting link if you go here. If you've never made a game before and you're kind of hesitant, but you're interested in how it works, you can go to gameful.org, and you can meet up with other librarians that have made games, and they will teach you everything they know to get a simple game up and running. And some of them are really fun. And they make these little lessons that you need to give when you're an academic librarian about citations or about doing research and finding articles. They can make it really fun. And there's been like zombie games. There's been a lot of kind of really creative games. So I'm just looking at my notes. Yeah, and so the games can be very simple or they can be much more complicated, but you can find out by going to gameful.org about how to join up with those people. And this is another slide from the Pottermore game, and I think it's just www.pottermore.com, and I might have it on one of my slides. But I think Judith Way did have a clever idea. I don't think that she was just shamelessly promoting the Pottermore or the Potter books, because what she did is she made a blog, and she is tying in her high school creative writing lessons in with this Pottermore game. So it's not just simply playing a game. She's finding ways to incorporate it into her learning lessons. And this is her blog here. What she's done in this blog is she has just made notes about how to play the game because she's a beta tester. And so she wants to kind of keep track of it for her students. And this is the site for Pottermore. And somebody typed that in. Great. So you can go and check that out. And it should be released fairly soon. They've gone past their release date a couple of times because they are so keyed into wanting to make it good for their fans, to kind of thank their fans for everything all of the books and the movies and everything that they've sold. Below that is the wiki that she set up that you can check out as well, Judith's wiki, that helps you play the game. And this is that my last slide? Yes, it is. So that's my last slide. And what I wanted to wrap up just by saying that The most fascinating thing about Library 2.011 was, for me, was that it was a lot of stories. It was like listening to people's stories. There was someone who was a 6th grade teacher that was using Skype for a 6th grade book club. And they were actually Skyping with the actual authors of the book, and they were Skyping with other kids that were reading the book, other 6th graders across the world. And there was another woman from our program who is a kindergarten teacher who was actually using iPads in the library with her kindergartners. So there's just all of these kind of great ideas that you wouldn't even think about, and it's all available for free still at the Library 2.011 website, and that's it right there. You can click in there, and that will take you directly to the recordings page, and then you can just scan through and look at what interests you and listen to the recordings. So that's pretty much the end of my talk. I just wanted to make it quick. I will give a kind of a shout out right now for the next Library 2.012 conference. Will be October 3rd and 5th of this year. And Steve Hargadon that runs it, he's a great person, very interesting, good person to network with. He gives you training so you don't have to feel like you're going to be there, and he's actually there holding your hand during all of the sessions. You can click back and talk to him in the middle of a session if you have a question. So don't hesitate to get involved with Library 2.011. It was a great experience for me. And that's the end of my session. I'm going to click off my mic, and then if you have questions, go ahead and raise your hand. Thank you.
Mardi, you said you were moderating or helping out with a session at 1 in the morning. Were the Library 2.011 sessions running around the clock? Were they 24 hours?
Yeah, they were 24 hours, and Steve Hargadon was trying to manage everything. I mean, he is amazing, the amount of energy that man has. But he put me in charge from 3 in the afternoon until, no, from something like 3 in the afternoon till 3 in the morning, something like that. And so at least he got some sleep. He got like an 8-hour chunk of sleep, and I ran everything that was going. And when it's late at night, they only run maybe 3 sessions or 2 sessions. During the day, it's more like 6 or 8. So yes, it does run overnight, all night long.
But that is kind of nice for the people, in the different places around the world, because you mentioned that there are people in India and Australia. So that is kind of a nice feature.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most interesting things about it was because it was open in the middle of the night, people would click in and they'd be clicking in from an elementary school on the other side of the world. A lot of people from the UK, and we wouldn't otherwise be hearing from them because it's just the times don't match up. So that was what made it really extra special. And the other thing that was interesting was a lot of volunteers, they would have their slot for 2 hours or an hour, and they would always come, you'd see them come back into the drop-in room to volunteer for more sessions because it was kind of addicting because you got to hear so many different stories.
Mardi, I was wondering if you can recall if there were any specific qualifications you needed to have in order to volunteer for this conference?
That's a really good question. Absolutely, that's what was great about this Library 2.011. They kind of thought it up at the last minute. And Sandy Hirsch, the director of our program, got together with Steve Hargadon and just kind of threw this together. And it was all run off that website. And you didn't have to have any experience to be a volunteer because they include training before it happens. Steve Hargadon will train you and tell you exactly what you need to do. As long as you know how to use Blackboard Collaborate, like you're doing now and can click on the mic, you can do it.
About how many days did the conference last in total?
It started about 3 o'clock on November 2nd, and it went through November 3rd, and then on November 4th at about 10 o'clock at night, we had an after party where everybody that had volunteered got into a conference room and kind of decompressed and told their stories. So that was a fun part of it too. And even when you go to the recordings, you can click in on that last little conference that we had. Well, I think like a wind down session they called it.
Do you have to be a student to volunteer, or do they take volunteers that are non-students, or say like alums or folks who are just interested?
That's the great thing about it, is because they need volunteers. We actually ran that Library 2.011 conference with a lot less volunteers than we needed. And that's why I was monitoring like 3 rooms at one time, or people would monitor 2 or 3 rooms at one time. So the more the better. You can be an alumni. If somebody that you know has tech skills or that isn't even in the program, they would welcome them as a volunteer as well.
Oh, cool. That's good to know, because I'll be graduating in May, and I may have some time on my hands in October, depending on how the job hunt goes. But even so, it sounds really interesting. I think I would definitely like to check it out. You know, once I'm not worried about schoolwork and other commitments.
You know, just to encourage people, many people signed up for just 1 or 2 hour shifts because that's all the time that they had. And that's fine. I signed up for that large chunk because I really wanted to give Steve Hargadon a break and be a hero, and it kind of worked out for me. I wasn't working at that time, and so I was able to do that for him. But you can definitely just do a short shift. So if there's no more questions, I'll let Sarah jump back in and wrap up the meeting. But this has been really fun. Thanks so much for listening to me, everybody.
Well, thank you, Marty, for your very interesting and just fantastic presentation. I really am so pleased that you offered to present tonight at our business meeting. It's been wonderful listening to you, and the experience that you shared really sounds like a great one that I think there are now several people who listened to speak tonight who are now interested in participating in that opportunity this coming year. So thank you very much again for presenting during our academic and professional experience sharing feature tonight. Are there any final comments or questions for Marty before we sign off? Okay, with that, thank you again, Marty, and with that, we will now close the business meeting. Thank you for attending, everyone, and good night.
So just to answer quickly the question about where to volunteer, if you watch on the listservs, you'll get, if you're on the SLIS list, which I'm sure everybody is, they send out a lot of announcements. So you can check that. Just watch for that. Good night. Yeah, it'll be posted. And it'll also be posted on the SLIS website. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Marty. Good night.